So I want to ask you something. If you had to guess, what do you think is the number one reason personal brands fail? Most people would say the algorithm, not enough time, not knowing what to post, and those are all real problems, but they're not really the root one. The real reason is this. People are building to go viral, and viral without a system to convert that attention into money is just another vanity metric with a cool screenshot. I've been in this space for close to 10 years. I built the Birdhouse, which did 1.7 million last year. We're on track to do over 3 this year, and the whole thing is built on personal brands, my own and the personal brands of the founders, business owners, and executives that we work with. And the one thing I see over and over again is that the thing that separates the people from actually making money from their brand from the people who are stuck is this. They think viral and profitable are in conflict with each other, and that's not the case. They aren't, and you can have both. You just have to know the system. So in this video, I'm giving you the entire system, the Pesto framework, the audience size strategy, the 3 documents you need to build before you post a single piece of content, the content funnel, the personal brand map that tells you exactly where your money is leaking, all of it for free right here in this video. And I think this is probably the most valuable video I've ever made. It's definitely going to be the longest. So if you are building a personal brand on Twitter X, or you've been trying to and it's just not working the way you want to, stay with me and let's get into it. All right, let me start with the thing that's probably going to sound the most contrarian, but once you see it, you really cannot unsee it. The personal branding industry, specifically on social media, teaches people to choose. You either have to build a brand that goes super viral, gets a lot of likes, gets a lot of engagement, and gets a super big following, or you build a brand that actually makes money. You know, you have your 1,000 true fans, you go super niche, and you don't really care about views at all. And I never really liked that argument. It never really made sense to me, and honestly, it's just super boring. And the argument goes that if you are chasing reach, you're posting broad content, general stuff, things that anyone can relate to, and that means you're not talking to your buyer. And what people really mean by that is they think that you have to basically just like dance on TikTok or go super broad with your TAM and your targeting to get any views. And if you're talking to your buyer, you're going to go super deep on your niche, and the niche content doesn't really spread, so you never build the audience in the first place. And the logic behind this is that the algorithms are so smart that they're going to take your content directly to your buyer. And I never really like that, because what I find is it builds a victim mentality around the algorithm. They find that if their content's not finding their buyers or not getting even a little bit of reach, it's the algorithm's fault. And when they're only getting 500 views, but they're signing clients, and the algorithm's great. And I never really liked that logic. I prefer to control what I can control. So I think this is a trap. And I spent years watching brands fall into it before I figured out why the framing is wrong in the first place. The reality is that viral and profitable don't have to be a trade-off. They are 2 separate levers, and the whole game is knowing when to pull each one in and what proportion based on where you are. If you pull the wrong lever at the wrong time, then it falls apart. So everything I'm going to give you in this video is built around that core idea. It's pulling the right lever at the right stage, depending on your audience size, depending on your goal, and depending on what's working in your content strategy right now. And don't worry, if nothing's working for you, we also have a full plan for you. So before we get into any of the content frameworks, I need to cover something that most people skip. And it's the reason most people's content never sounds like a real person, especially in the age of AI. It really just sounds like a corporate brand, or it sounds like someone else is talking in their place. And the word brand on social media, especially on Twitter X, is really a death sentence. At the Birdhouse, before a client posts a single piece of content, we build 3 core documents that act as the foundation for the brand, and those are not really optional. Everything else in the system is built on top of these 3 things, and that's why we're going to start here. The first is the avatar breakdown. This is where you're going to do a full psychographic and demographic breakdown of your ideal client. Not just like who they are in a surface level sense, but the fears that keep them up at 3 a.m., their dreams, their desires, the thing they're too embarrassed to admit that hasn't worked, the language they use to describe their own problem. Because when your content speaks their language back at them, it doesn't feel like content. It feels like you're reading their mind, and it's really what makes them stop scrolling. It feels more like a forum or like an insider group chat. The second thing is the creative brief, and this is where we pull everything about your origin story, your marketing angles, your expertise, your social proof. The specific things only you can say because of what you've been through. And this is really what's going to add a lot of substance to your brand. It's also going to add a lot of originality and individuality to your personal brand. It's what makes a brand personal. Your content can be technically correct, but it could be completely generic if you don't really do this. So the creative brief is what makes it specific, and specific is the only thing that cuts through right now. The third is going to be the voice and tone guide, and this is the one that people underestimate the most. It's going to be your lingo, your sentence patterns, your tone, your coined phrases, the words you use naturally, and the words that would never come out of your mouth in the first place. I always make the comparison that like David Goggins' book, he had a ghostwriter that followed him around for a full year before writing the book. And we try to compress this into like a 60 to 90 minute process with these 3 documents. So the voice guide is how we do it in the first place, because without this, the content sounds like AI wrote it, or worse, like an agency wrote it, and your audience will feel the difference immediately, or they could just tell that you don't really stand out. So the 3 documents come first, everything else builds on top of them. And if you're doing this yourself, write them yourself before you start. I think a really good piece of practical advice here is you can just basically take the transcript of this portion of the video, feed it to your LLM of choice like Claude or Grok, and essentially what you can do is ask Claude line by line to ask you individual questions one by one. So a good prompt for you on this would be like, hey, ask me one-off questions or individual questions until you can build a full voice and tone guide for me and my personal brand, because I want to do some content. Ask questions until you feel sufficient enough to build this document. Do the same thing for the creative brief. Do the same thing for the avatar breakdown. And essentially what you're going to do is create a little bit of an interview process with AI. Again, that should take you about 60 minutes. Build these foundational documents, and that is where you're going to get started. Okay, so now let's get into the content system itself. These are what I call the Pesto pillars. If you've been following me for a while, you've seen me talk about this, but I'm going to break it down line by line right now. So this is a proprietary framework the Birdhouse runs for every single client, and it's the answer to the question I get more than any other, which is what should I be posting in the first place? So the 5 pillars are personal, expertise, social proof, trending, and opinions. So we're going to go through each of these pillars, give you a few examples of what they look like in my personal brand so that you can hopefully get some ideas for yours. So every piece of content works, and the reason this works is because each pillar serves a completely different psychological purpose for your audience. Some people want to know your story, some people want tactical knowledge, some people need proof before they trust you, some people need to see if you have an opinion before they follow you. You need all 5 to build a complete brand, because a brand missing any of these is one-dimensional, and a one-dimensional brand plateaus. So let me break them down one by one. So let's start with P for personal. All right, so personal. Personal is your story, your background, behind the scenes of your life, family content, personal moments, anything that really only can apply to you and your day-to-day life. I like to say this is kind of like behind the scenes content. It could be bloopers. There's really a lot of ways you can go with this. And this is the content that makes you human. And I want to be clear about why this matters, because a lot of founders I talk to are like allergic to personal content. They think it dilutes the professional authority they're trying to build. But what in reality happens is that the opposite is true. Personal content is the thing that builds the tribe. It's the thing that makes someone feel like they found their person. They feel like they can relate to you, and they're not just listening to another expert. And without personal content, your brand is really just kind of like a library of information. But with it, you are a person, you're a human. That's what makes you a personal brand. And ultimately, people are just trying to follow other people. So one of these tweets I did, and I tried to pull a bunch of outliers for each of these pillars. I've obviously tweeted thousands of times in each pillar. Not every single time it goes viral, not every single time it performs well, but everyone I have here actually performed as an outlier or pretty well for my personal brand. So here's just like an easy one. I actually always joke that getting engaged is like a huge engagement hack when it comes to tweeting. So this is just a super, super personal. I just wrote deal closed. This is when I got engaged in front of Mount Fuji to my fiance, Julia. As you can see, it got like 17,000 likes. It also got like 17,000 views. It got like 300 or 400 likes. So this is just an easy one. I know it's a one-off. You can't really replicate this more than once, but you get the idea. Like anytime you have a life moment, one we did for a client was he surprised his dad with first class tickets. And I thought that was a super cool one-off personal moment. You know, buying your mom a car is like a cool moment. Rebranding or launching something like that could be a cool moment. Buying a house, just anything, right? And it also could be casual, right? It doesn't just have to be milestones. It could be as simple as you're at the gym. It could be as simple as you woke up early, like Jocko Willink always puts like the 3 a.m. picture of his watch. So there's a lot of ways you can go with this, but this is one example. And now here's another example. I have a tweet, maybe I could pop it up on the screen. This is actually a variation a viral content framework because the joke is that there was this space in a house and it was like a little crook in a staircase. And the joke, it goes viral all the time, is like, what should I do with this space? And people just do these like AI generations in the space that you post. So I'll pop some of the replies up on the screen, but people were just like AI generating a bunch of things I should have done in my backyard. But essentially, this is a question. Questions are a great way to get engagement. As you can see, this got 72 comments, 85,000 views. And all I said was, what should I do with my backyard? A pool, a farm, a roller coaster, something else. So I was kind of leading on the viewer, and people AI generated so much funny stuff. The Emirates, BJJ mats, you name it. So we'll definitely pop those up on the screen, but this was a really good personal tweet and it was super, super low effort. I call this like a really low effort, high reward kind of post where all I had to do was go in the backyard, take a picture and post a couple of questions. Super, super easy. And now here's a little bit more thought out of a version. I think I've brought this up in a separate video, but this is just health stuff I spend money on. That's 100% worth it. This is again built off of a super viral framework that I've essentially twisted and turned and made it my own. So like one thing you guys know I'm big on is taking viral frameworks that have existed in other niches. Maybe they have completely different hooks. Maybe you're just taking the listicle style, et cetera, and using them to your advantage, putting them into the Pesto fillers, putting them into the content funnel. So I said here, health stuff that I spend money on, that's 100% worth it. I listed a bunch of things that I do in my day-to-day life: red light therapy, blue light blockers, jujitsu. I even tag Sahil Bloom because I'll use his skincare, longevity mix, all this stuff. This is all stuff I really do. And then I added a little bit of a hook, line, and sinker at the end. The ROI on feeling good every single day is higher than any business investment I've made. Took me years to lock this in. And then of course I added the nice little question at the end to add a conversation starter. The punchline here is that I asked the question, it only got 38 comments, but this actually got a ton of quote tweets. I think it got quoted by Dan Go, Sahil Bloom, a bunch of other people, which is why it has 382,000 views with only 400 likes. So I didn't run like an ad or anything. It just, all the quote tweets is what's carrying the viewership. And again, maybe we can pop up some of the quote tweets that came up on this one. So that is personal. Personal is really great. You can do storytelling, you can do behind the scenes, you can do milestones. There's really a lot of cool ways you can do this. I like to off the cuff tweet. Like I'll just tweet stuff like, I just saw a movie, post my movie tickets. Maybe I'll rate the most recent movie. I also like to tweet about Arsenal. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go with this depending on you and your hobbies. I tweet about jujitsu. So there's so many things that you can weave into the personal pillar, but this is the number one pillar that you absolutely cannot ignore. Otherwise, you're just going to become a billboard, and it really kind of discounts the whole point of building a personal brand. Otherwise, you could just build a theme page. The next pillar is going to be expertise. Expertise is essentially the actual knowledge, right? The how-tos, the frameworks, the mental models, the listicles. And the data is really clear on this, that how-tos and listicles are the top performing text-based content formats on social media. Actually, I think it's on the whole internet right now. And they have been for years. And the reason is simple. People share content that makes them look smart to whoever they forward it to. And expertise content does that. So think of expertise content as your trust builder. Someone finds your personal content and thinks, okay, this person's interesting. And then they find your expertise content and think, okay, this person actually knows their stuff. And this is really like the two-step. It's the jab, jab, right hook. And this is essentially going to position you as an authority. This is going to make people think, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. Maybe it's a tip, something practical or tactical that they can go implement, and then they can go get a result with that, and they come back and now they really trust you. And we'll talk about this in the next pillar, and it goes really well with social proof, but expertise is going to be one of the core pillars for growth. It's going to be one of the core pillars for trust, authority, and lead gen. So a couple of examples of expertise from my personal brand. And I tweet a lot of expertise content. I will say, like, out of the 5 pillars, my top performing are these first 3 pillars. So expertise is one of the cornerstones of my personal brand. It helps me stand out, and I'm able to speak from experience because I do run an agency and we're posting thousands of pieces of content every month. So nobody has the data that I have access to. Like, we literally have over 10 billion impressions worth of data when it comes to content on X, LinkedIn, you name it. So I feel like I'm in a unique position to share a lot of insights that are super unique to us, which is kind of why I like to lean on this. Now, if your expertise is more repetitive, you might not want to lean on this as much, right? You might want to lean more on trending content or personal content. And that could be something like, I don't know, something like weight loss, right? If you're doing a lot of like calorie in, calorie out stuff for weight loss, you can only tweet calories in, calories out and diet so many times. There's a lot of cool ways to repackage it, but you might lean on something more like trending. And that's something we actually do for some of our fitness coach clients. So let me get into some of the examples. Here's the first example. This is only a month ago. X is where the people with the money are: founders, investors, operators. Almost 1 in 3 US users here earns over 100K, and barely anyone is making content from them yet. B2B content on X is one of the biggest opportunities of a year. So this got over 100 likes, 8,000 views, really solid performer in terms of actual engagement. The reason this performed well is, one, because it's a stat that not a lot of people knew, but it's also a stat that not a lot of people believed. And I know I keep saying I'm going to pop a lot of stuff on the screen, but someone actually commented and was like, is this true? I doubt it. And they asked Grok to essentially verify the claim, and Grok was like, yes, this is true. So I think one of the reasons this performed really well is, one, it was a little known fact that actually supports what I'm trying to sell. It supports my personal brand, but it also was true. It was verifiable. And I thought that was really cool. So it's a great piece of expertise. And that's the whole point of being an expert, right? You know information that other people don't know. That transfer of information is what being an expert is. Another one, so this was a talking head video. You can do these talking head videos on X right now. They're a really cool format that they released maybe like a month ago now. All you have to do is go to the little retweet button in the bottom. You click it, or you hold it down rather, you click react to this video, and it'll let you do like a green screen native in X to whatever tweet you clicked react to. You can also do actual green screen, but these are a really cool format, and I jumped on it right when it came out. And if you made it this far in this video, a practical tip is, like, anytime X releases a new feature, we always try to jump on it, because I've noticed, they haven't publicly said this, but I've noticed that anytime X releases a new feature, whether it be articles, whether it be green screen, you name it, that feature always tends to get boosted on the algorithm for the first few weeks. And it's probably because they're just trying to get feedback on the feature, but just a little piece of advice. So this is an example I did. You need to treat every single burner account like it's a billionaire. Obviously that's a great hook. And I can't tell you how many times I've had a conversation with accounts that look like bots and end up being the burner of a high net worth individual, which is 100% true. And X is the best platform in the world for connecting with rich people, which, again, 100% true. I agree with. 47,000 views, 300 likes. So these are just a couple of cool examples of expertise. If you follow me on X or YouTube, I post a lot of expertise content. So you can literally just scroll my feed and you'll see hundreds of these posts in the last month. Next is going to be social proof. Again, this is a huge pillar for me. It's one of my number one when it comes to lead gen and engagement. So social proof, this is really your receipts. This is how you prove you are who you say you are. So expertise is really like, hey, I know my stuff. Social proof is, and I mean it, I'm proving it, I'm backing it up, right? So this is your receipts, your case studies, your results, your client wins, your testimonials, your screenshots. It's the prove it pillar, because expertise tells people you know things, and social proof proves it. And there is a specific way to do social proof that works. And then there's also a way to do it that backfires. And the way that backfires is really just like pure bragging, just flexing to flex. I don't recommend that. I prefer to post like real transformations, real numbers. Keep it super realistic, super raw. Don't have to flex too much. Like, I will say, hey, we're the best team in the game, we're the best agency, but I'm not out there saying like everybody else sucks or something like that, right? Lead with storytelling, pull on the heartstrings, lead with cool value, etc. So a couple of examples of social proof. These are both in the last week or so. July 7th, I'm recording this July 26th. Signed a client 4 weeks ago. We posted 330 times across 5 platforms. The TLDR results are 3.3 million views and 1.9 thousand followers. And I broke down platform by platform what the results were. Got about 4,000 views and 46 likes, which is great for a social proof post. And another example was signed a client 2 weeks ago. And as you can see, this is a framework that works really well for me. Feel free to steal it. On X alone, 400,000 plus impressions and 200 new followers. Packed calendar. He literally booked 10 calls in the first 2 weeks and closed the deal. No paid ads, no partnerships. It was 100% organic on his X account only. And it was just a good niche. High quality information, proven content frameworks mixed with frequency. And I like to post these like pudgy penguin or bird gifs. They're just kind of cool on brand. And this one got 9,000 views. So these are a really good framework. If you go to my highlights section, I always recommend using the highlights section as really like a testimonial, endless scroll billboard for all of your reviews, all of your case studies, your screenshots, everything. So that's just a little bit of a practical tip when it comes to social proof. But this pillar is really the cornerstone of my personal brand. So I highly recommend locking in on this. Obviously, it's a lot easier when you have more results, but you can go as far back as 2022 when I first started this company. My screenshots were babies, right? It was like, ooh, my client got like a viral threat, or like my client gained 10 followers. Like, I was literally just grasping anything that I can use for social proof, any nice thing a client said to me. And then over time, when you get better and better results, you can obviously put more and more social proof up. But if you're already a super established founder and established business owner, and you feel like I already have the best case studies in the game and my competitors are getting more viewers than me, well, this is why social proof is such an important piece of content, because this is how you prove that you're the best in the game. This is how you get ahead of those people. And you can really just, as the kids would say, you can mog them with your social proof. So the next pillar T is trending. This is your reach engine. Trending content is where you take something that already has attention and something that's already moving on the timeline and you bend it through your specific expertise. You're borrowing an audience that already exists and then redirecting it towards your brand. So I always say this is like the best way to get organic reach, because it's something that already has SEO on the platform. People are already searching it. It's already trending on people's inbox. So a lot of it's going to show up in their feed. The reason trending plus expertise wins for rapid growth specifically is exactly this. Trending gets you the reach because you're riding the momentum that's already there, and expertise makes that reach stick to you because you said something only you could say about it. Anyone could chase a trend, but when you apply your specific angle to a trend, you convert borrowed attention into your own audience, and that combination is the fastest way from zero. So I always say, like, trending is really the way to get the wind at your back when it comes to content rather than trying to fight uphill. So trending is a little bit more difficult for me, but I have some good examples for you. So this one is for me, like, end of the Premier League season. I'm an Arsenal fan, so this is kind of combining pillars, and you'll notice like the Pesto pillars aren't always going to be super cut and dry. You're not only always going to have one pillar in your content. So a lot of times you can combine them and get kind of like a multiplier effect. So a trending piece of content for me that is also subsequently personal, especially in the thread when you can very much tell I'm an Arsenal fan. We did a trending piece of content on Mikel Arteta. This 44-year-old manager just ended Arsenal's 22-year Premier League drought. I'm a diehard Arsenal fan, so this is obviously kind of a personal piece of content, but Arsenal was also trending at the end of the Premier League season. So we were able to do a thread that got like 30,000 views, 200 likes. It's just a biopic on Arsenal in terms of like how they build a winning team. And I just applied it back to how every founder can steal some of these principles. Kind of a LinkedIn piece of content, but that's a piece of trending content for my brand. And then I have a couple of easy ones, especially back in March. Claude was just releasing like a new feature every single day. So I jumped on that a couple different times, and I have a couple different one-liners that did really well. Claude Cowork can already replace every LinkedIn outreach software on the market. So I took two big trending keywords, Claude and LinkedIn, and it got me over 300 likes, 30,000 views organically. And a few days before that, I did Claude Cowork scheduled tasks are basically magic. This is outdated now because I use mostly like Claude code and routines, which I'll do in a future video, but 400 likes and another 47,000 views. So Claude is like a super easy one. Anyone can jump on this. Like, everyone is searching all of these AI keywords. So like if you can link anything AI back to your piece of content or back to your niche, easy way to get super organic viewership with trending. And the last is going to be opinions. So O stands for opinions, and this is your most polarizing pillar and also the one where most people are afraid to use it, right? Opinions are your hot takes, the things you believe that most people in your space would push back on, the contrarian angles, and it's really where you draw a line in your sand. And one of two things happen, right? They're either going to jump on your side, they're going to agree with you, they're probably going to engage, they're probably going to follow, and they might even build some loyalty towards you. Or if they disagree on the other side of that line, they're going to disagree with you and they're going to comment, they're going to let you know about it. And what that actually does is you get engagement either way. Now, I will say the huge disclaimer around opinions is you have to say stuff you agree with. I think a general rule of thumb with opinions to know if it's going to harm or help your brand is if 50% or more people disagree with you, it's probably going to harm your brand a little bit more. But if 50% or less agree with you, then it's going to be good for your brand, right? You're going to take a stance, you're going to get great engagement, and you're going to get more benefit than loss. I think if it's 50-50, toe to the line, if you want to be a polarizing brand, I think 50-50 is fine. I try to stay under 50%. More than 50%, you're probably just rage baiting. You might risk getting banned because people are just going to spam report you, even if you're not doing anything wrong. I think a really good example of this is kind of like the Andrew Tate thing. Way more people disagreed, and it did build a little bit of a cult following, but obviously you can get just like nuked and arrested and all that good stuff. So opinions. I will say this is one of my weaker pieces, so I had to go a little bit further back on these just because opinions in my niche are like way too radical. So anyways, I have a couple of examples that I did. We have clients that do these way stronger, but here's one that went viral for me. 2,000 likes, 90,000 views. Your first years as a man are age 26 and 27. Everything else is a prologue. I do believe that, which is why I tweeted it. This obviously in the comments, people said your first years as a man are 30. Some people in the comments said your first years are when you have kids. Some people were like, this is stupid. Some people were like, completely agree. I'd say like only like 30% of people disagreed, but this did really well. 62 comments, but 2,000 likes. So I kind of always look at it as like the comments are going to be more people that disagree and the likes are going to be people that agree. So that's kind of the ratio. I guess that's more than 30%, but you get the point. This is a really funny one because this is satire, but I think what it did is actually got the effect of an opinion. So when Hormozi did his big book launch, if you don't know who Alex Hormozi is, you probably do if you're watching this. He did this big $100 million book launch, and then he upsold to AI at the end, and you had to buy like 100 books or something like that, right? So I said, who the fuck's paying Hormozi $6K for books in an AI? And I think a lot of people were like, me, obviously me, I would never pay that. But the joke of it is that I did. So most people didn't see the second tweet because the first tweet got 170,000 likes, 800 likes, 170,000 views. But my second tweet, the joke was that I did. We bought the AI. It's actually pretty good. But the reason that this got the effect of an opinion is that 170,000 people got to see this first piece of content and they were like, oh, they either agreed or disagreed. And everybody in my niche and industry knew about this book launch. So it was kind of like a trending opinion. So you kind of combine the two pillars, and it was specifically a trending thing on the internet money space, I would say. So this was a really cool opinion that did well for me. You can obviously get super red hot with opinions. We have clients that say the most outrageous shit. My job's never to agree with my clients. My job is to amplify their opinion as long as it's not hurting anybody. So opinions can be super, super lukewarm, in which they're going to be less effective, or they can be super, super hot and they might be too effective. And this is really a balancing act. So again, the disclaimer here is only say things that you actually agree with, a hill that you would really die on. A lot of people look at this and they want to ask like, okay, what's the right mix of pillars? How much of each do I do? Should I do more personal? Should I do more opinions? Should I do more trending, right? So here's the honest answer. If you're just starting out, go 1/5 on each. I like to compare it to like NBA sliders. You can just start each of them at 20%. And then depending on which ones perform better, you can move those sliders up and down. So I used to joke that me and my brother, we used to play NBA 2K and we used to shove the 3-point slider up to 100% without telling the other person, and then all the threes would go in, right? So you never want to go 100% of each pillar, but it's a really good example because the reason you don't know yet what resonates with your specific audience is that you haven't tested all 5 equally. So I want you to test all 5, 20% in each pillar, watch what performs, and then adjust. If your opinions content is doing 3 times what everything else does in terms of engagement, then lean into it. And if your social proof is bringing more qualified leads, then you can double it, especially if you're looking for leads. But if you are at capacity, you can then tone down the social proof, right? The framework gives you the starting point, but the data is what tells you to go from there, how to adjust, how to build each pillar, and how to move those sliders up and down. So I will cover how to read that data when we get to the personal brand math section. So keep watching and let's get into the next part. So this is probably the most contrarian thing that I'm going to say in this video, and I want you to actually sit with it before you dismiss it. The content strategy that grows you at 0 followers is definitely not the same strategy that makes you money at 10,000 followers. And most people either do not know this or they completely ignore it, and it's usually just cope. And the reason they either grow without converting or convert on a tiny little audience and plateau early is this. It's the audience size strategy. And it is built around one core idea. It's that you have to pull the right lever at the right stage. So phase 1 is essentially 0 to 5K followers. It can be a little less or a little more depending on your niche, but 0 to 5K followers is essentially the starting point, right? After 5K followers, I always say it's a lot different because you kind of have that organic reach. Like you can get tweets with 1,000, 2,000 likes, completely organic every single day. And at least 50% of your content is going to be top of funnel at this stage. And what I mean by that is you want to have high TAM hooks. You want to look a little bit more into trending and expertise angles. You want broad appeal angles. Goal is essentially to build your base level of reach. And it's going to be like less niche in your content because niche content too early starves itself of an audience. So what I mean by that is, let's just say you're a fitness coach, right? And you were just posting a bunch of social proof. I helped this guy transform into this, and I helped this guy transform into this. But the problem is you're not going to get any reach on it because you have fucking Dan Go posting his transformations, getting a guaranteed 100,000 views on every single tweet. So 0 to 5K followers, you want to have high TAM hooks. So you might jump on trends, right? It might be Claude, it might be ChatGPT, something like that, or it might be the new latest and greatest peptide, it might be sauna, it might be cold plunge. You need to talk about things that people are already thinking of, stuff that's top of mind, because it's going to be very difficult for you to gain mind share if you're not in these high TAM hooks, if you're not in these high TAM subjects. So the traditional sense, and this is why it's a little bit controversial, is they say, just say your thing, speak to your 100 true fans, and then just stay small forever. And I never really agreed with that because what happens, especially early on, is our clients would gain like 100 followers. And I'm just like, what is going on? And the reason is because they had less than 5,000 followers, sometimes less than 500 followers. And we're sitting there trying to be super, super niche, super edgy, super technical. They weren't getting any reach. So early on, you want at least 50% of your content to get to be top of funnel. Focus on trending, opinions. If you're going to do personal, try to make it trending personal. If you're going to do opinions, try to make it trending opinions. Expertise, trending expertise, right? Like you want to stick into these trends to try and get some organic pops. And a lot of times you can do this in like 1 or 2 big pops, 1 or 2 big threads, 1 or 2 big articles, and then you get to switch strategies later on. So that is going to be your 0 to 5K followers. The next phase is going to be 5K up to about 25K followers, plus or minus a few thousand followers, depending on your niche. So this is where you're going to shift the mix. You're going to have your niche content that's going to increase in percentage. You're going to have more ICP specific hooks. You remember we did that avatar breakdown at the beginning. You could start speaking directly to them, like women over 40, women over 50, right? And this is where direct conversion content starts showing up as well. You can do hand raisers. You can do a lot more lead magnets, and the existing audience provides cover for narrow targeting. So what I mean by that is, again, if you have over 5,000 followers, a lot of times your tweets are going to get hundreds of views, if not thousands of views at the very minimum, just from your organic audience, from the people who are using the followers only tab, from the people who are actually in your audience, they really like your content, etc. Now, I know this contradicts because a lot of people think like, okay, this contradicts with the Pesto pillars, right? You said to use the Pesto pillars 20%, 20%, 20%, but then you say to use 50% top of funnel under 5K followers, and then to shift the mix. Now, again, you need to use nuance because not all of the content pillars have to just be that pillar, right? So for example, you can do all 5 of the Pesto pillars, but mix in trending topics into the hooks. You can use high TAM hooks for every single pillar. So what do I mean by that? For example, if I'm doing a piece of expertise driven content, maybe instead of how I helped an executive or how to help an executive who is 40 plus making X, Y, and Z per year grow on Twitter, I can say how to use Claude to build an AI second brain to grow your personal brand or something like that, right? So I can build a high TAM hook into an expertise driven piece of content. So I want you to kind of use a lot of nuance here because I think where a lot of people get hung up is they think everything has to be black and white, which is absolutely not the case. And it's never the case when it comes to building personal brands at a high level. That's why a lot of people hire us, because there is a lot of nuance involved. After that, you have 25K plus followers. So again, plus or minus probably like 5,000 followers here, depending on your niche. Like for example, 20,000 followers in the fitness niche is really not that much when there's so many of these big fitness coaches with 100K plus followers. But 20K followers in my niche, for example, I'm probably like top 5 accounts in my niche, right? So phase 3, 25K plus followers. This is your authority mode. Your content is driving owned outcomes, events, podcast partnerships, inbound deal flow. Top of funnel becomes secondary. So for me at 27,400, 500 followers, I don't really do a lot of top of funnel because I get substantial lead flow from my account. I like the lead flow from my account. I'm actively growing my agency. I'm actively signing, 3-4 agency clients every single month just from my X account. So I don't need to change anything. I don't want to go top of funnel. If I was trying to go higher than that, I would obviously go a little bit more top of funnel and post less social proof. Right now, I'm opting for growing my agency. I want clients, so I'm posting more social proof. And I've already done the 0 to 5, 5 to 25, and 25K plus followers. So I kind of have that flexibility. At this point, you can do a lot of things. This is where it really all matters with the Pesto pillars. You can do whatever the Pesto pillars tell you. If you did 40% personal because personal is crushing, feel free to do 40% personal. If you want to sign clients, you can shove more social proof and so on and so forth. So I'd say this is where you get the most flexibility, and this is where you kind of get super creative. It's going to be super unique to you. If you've gotten to this point, chances are you already have a good understanding of how to build your personal brand, what works, what doesn't, your goals, and in terms of like a content flow. So I know this is probably going to be a small percentage of people here, so I won't spend too much time on it. Even less I'll spend on the last one, which I don't have anything here for a reason, and that is essentially variable phase 4. This is what I call a TAM pivot. So what this means is you've already have so many followers in your niche that you really can't get anymore. You're growing very slow. You've already hit kind of like the ceiling for your niche. So I'll give a great example of this. Alex Becker, right? He got to a certain point when it comes to building an agency and building a personal brand. Then he switched from that, the marketing content, the Facebook ads, everything like that, over to Hyros and went into the more software space. And then he went to like crypto, and that crypto niche really blew up his Twitter account, right? He went from maybe a couple 100,000 followers up to close to 1 million followers with that TAM pivot. Whether he did it intentionally or not, he had already hit the peak in that business niche, and going to what was called crypto Twitter at the time, and NFTs and everything like that exposed him to a completely different audience on Twitter. So now he had all the followers from the business niche and all the followers he gained from the crypto niche. And if he really wanted to, he could pivot again, right? Like he could go into like self-help. So TAM pivots is really, it's something that like 1% of people will really ever have to do. But this is the only way to really grow your audience past a certain threshold. Another great example of this is Logan Paul. He was on Vine, then he was on YouTube, then he was doing like Pokemon cards, then he pivoted to boxing, then he pivoted to WWE, now he's pivoting back to Pokemon cards. And you have to keep doing these pivots to, one, stay relevant, but two, to continue growing your audience in different niches. TAM pivots, super, super high level. I'm not going to spend much time on it, but it's important to know that like that's going to be like the North Star if you want to build your personal brand to that point. Real quick, if you are finding this useful, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. I post this kind of stuff regularly, the actual systems and frameworks, not the generic advice you can find everywhere else. And if you want to go even deeper, I do have a free 44-page X playbook linked in the description that breaks down exactly how we run these frameworks for our clients on X specifically. It's essentially a deeper version of this video. It is free, it's detailed, and it's the same system that has taken clients to millions per year on the platform. So the link is below. Let's keep going. So now that you understand the Pesto pillars and when to shift the audience size strategy, the next piece is understanding how those content types stack on top of each other in terms of function. This is going to be the content funnel. Tofu, mofu, bofu, top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. And every piece of content you post sits in one of these 3 layers. Tofu content is reach content. This is what brings people in cold who have never heard of you in the first place, right? Trending content, broad personal stories, relatable observations. These are going to be those high TAM hooks. This is latching on organic trends, etc., right? The job of tofu is to get new eyes on your name. Nothing more, nothing less. If someone sees your tofu content and thinks, interesting, who is this person? Then it worked. And as you can see in this visual, this is where they're going to be entering into your funnel, into your universe, into your net, if you will. Mofu content, aka middle of funnel, is going to be authority content. This is going to be your expertise. This is going to be your opinions, etc. This is what converts a curious new follower into someone who actually trusts you. It brings them further into your universe, further into your funnel. So deep expertise posts, detailed case studies, behind the scenes of how you think. The job of Mofu content is to take people from, okay, this guy's interesting, to this person actually knows what they're talking about, right? I actually resonate with this person. And this is going to be a majority of your content if you're kind of in those middle audience size strategies. So lastly, you have Bofu content. This is going to be your bottom of funnel. And this is really going to be your conversion content, right? This is the last piece of this visual. As you can see at the bottom, you have money, because after Bofu content is where you actually start generating calls and sales. This is the content most personal brands almost never post. And it's the reason most people build audience that never buy anything. Bofu is where you make the ask. Posts with explicit CTAs, call to actions, lead magnets, offer reveals, case study posts with a direct invitation at the end. And without bottom of funnel content, you're running a media company and not a business. Now, the issue is that a lot of people don't want to do any bottom of funnel content until they already have an audience. And what that does is essentially a misdirect where you lose trust with your audience, because you essentially built an audience of freebie seekers, not an audience of buyers. So my number one piece of advice is to monetize from day one. No matter how little, you need to be having CTAs from day one so that you're actually building with buyers in mind. Now, the balance across a week roughly looks like this, right? More tofu content, more mofu, less bofu. Something like 3 top of funnel posts, 3 middle of funnel posts, and 1 bottom of funnel post per week is a good starting point. And the exact split shifts as your audience grows, because at scale, you can afford to convert more aggressively. But the mistake to avoid, especially early, is going too heavy on the Bofu content before you've built enough trust to make the ask land super hard. So again, as you will learn from me, I'm big on nuance, because it's not always going to be don't do CTAs until an X amount of audience, or only do CTAs after X point. I do recommend doing CTAs from day one, but obviously less than when you have more followers and more eyeballs. Now, if it was easy, I wouldn't have built this agency in the first place, which is why, again, I'm going to go super granular on these, and there is a lot of nuance, but the people who are obviously going to get the most out of this video are the people who understand nuance and can apply it for themselves. So next we have personal brand math. Now, there's a number on your profile you check every day and a number that actually pays you that you never looked at once. So here's where this all comes together. Everything I've talked about so far, the Pesto mix, the audience size strategy, the content funnel, it all flows into one place, and that's going to be this number, right? This is a personal brand math. And the reason I love this framework is because it makes the problem specific. It also makes it super easy to understand with one equation. Now, instead of my content's not working, you can now diagnose exactly where the breakdown is in your funnel. And that core funnel is this follower to call ratio. Now, obviously, this implies that you are booking calls from your personal brand. You can obviously just morph this equation to be followers to sales or followers to etc., right? Depending on what you're aiming for, followers to subscribers. But we're going to focus on followers to calls. A healthy follower to call ratio is somewhere between 20 to 50. What that means is for every 20 to 50 new followers you add, you should be booking one sales call. And if you are at 1,000 new followers and you had 0 sales calls from your content, your ratio is broken, and we can figure out why by doing a little bit of a bottleneck analysis, etc. Right? Now, there's usually three places it breaks. Now, the first is content reach. If you're not getting any impression and nobody is seeing your content, this is usually a posting frequency problem or a TAM problem. Either you're not posting enough or your hooks are a little bit too narrow to get distributed and you need to make a small adjustment there. The second is going to be audience quality. If you're getting reach, but no one relevant is following, then your content is reaching the wrong people. And this is usually an audience size strategy problem. You went too niche too early, or you never narrowed down when you hit the right threshold. And then the last diagnosis is usually a conversion mechanism problem. If you have a good audience, but they're not booking any calls at all, you're not getting any conversion, you're probably missing some of that bottom of funnel content. You have warm people and nothing to port them towards. You don't have any lead magnets that's warming them up. You don't have any videos going out that are full breakdowns, just like the video you're watching now. You don't have any social proof case studies, you name it, right? This is the easiest fix. All you have to do is add it to your content mix. So when you feel like your personal brand is not working, run the diagnosis. Now, a really good example of this, again, just to do the math, you have 50 new followers and you book one call and you have a 20% close rate. That's $160,000 that month if you got, now there's a lot of really good examples of this, right? So like for 50 new followers, if you gain 1,000 followers, that should be 20 sales calls, and 20 sales calls at, let's just say $1,000 cash collected per book call, that is going to be $20,000. And you can just reverse engineer that, exactly what we do for our clients, right? If one of our clients is gaining 5,000 followers and they're doing 50 follower to call ratio and they're booking 100 calls, this is a real mathematics. This is a real math problem that we have for a client. This is a real math problem that we had for a client. They gained 5,000 followers and they booked 100 calls, which means for every 50 new followers, they were able to book a sales call. They are collecting about $1,600 US every single time they booked a call. So $1,600 times the 100 calls, they booked $160,000 cash in 1 month with us. And that is the real math that can happen if you have all of this broken down to a science, because then at the top of the funnel, the content team, all we have to focus on is getting qualified leads in, aka followers, and the sales team is collecting $1,600 for every call that comes in. So it's a really good example. Obviously, you have some things in your sales process that you might need to work on to make that math work, but it's a really good metric to track, and that's why we track it in the first place. So you just take whatever your current follower growth is, divide it by the number of calls you are getting from inbound, and that is your ratio. If it's above 40, you have a conversion problem. Take whatever your current follower growth is, divide it by the number of calls you are getting from inbound, and that is your ratio. If it's above 50, you have a conversion problem. If you cannot even calculate it because you have no calls at all, you either have a reach problem or a quality problem, and we just work backwards from there. Another great rule of thumb is like, reach is never the goal, right? I don't really care about 500K viewers, but I do care about the 2,000 followers that are buyers, right? So reach in the right room, not the biggest one. Another great rule is the CTA rule, right? Let a post prove itself first, and then the top 15 to 20% added the CTA. So what I mean by that is, in a software like Hype Fury or Tweet Hunter or whatever you want, you can set up an auto plug rule. So after the post performs to, let's say, a top 10 or 20% of engagement, you can then plug a CTA. And that is when people will actually see the CTA after the post has already taken off a bit. And then again, track your follower to call ratio, followers gained, calls booked, close rate. A really easy way to do this is just look at your calls booked and then look at your cash collected per book call, and you could just reverse engineer those 3 numbers. So followers, calls, and cash collected per book call, and then you just get your follower to call ratio, and then it's super easy. So again, if you're worse than 50 to 1, the fix isn't really this. Again, if you're worse than 50 to 1 and you do have a substantial amount of followers, not just like 100 followers, the fix isn't going to be more content or better content. It's going to be the right people. It's going to be tailoring the actual content to attract your ICP. And again, that is why we have that avatar breakdown at the beginning. It all circles together. The whole point of building the foundational documents is that you are talking to the right people and you're attracting the right people in the first place. So again, a follower that can't turn into a call, it's just applause, track the number that pays you. So here is going to be a little bit of a visual of the funnel. X, whatever piece of content you create, whether it's a thread or a post or a video, after it is a top 10 to 20% performer, you're going to CTA, whether it's a CTA directly to book a call or a CTA to DM. I like CTA to DM, preferably a keyword CTA. So like, for example, if you're reading this and you're a founder or CEO who wants to grow their personal brand in the next 3 months, DM me keyword brand, let's chat, let's see if it's worth it. They DM me that keyword, I have a conversation with them, ideally I qualify them, and then they get on a call. Ideally, the recording of that call is taken, the transcript, fed back to AI. That AI gives me some of their top objections, maybe some of their top concerns, and I turn that into content. So just another little piece of sauce for you. So to close this out, let me give you the actual order of operations, because I know I just handed you a lot, and the most common mistake is trying to implement it all at once. So first, you want to build the 3 documents: the avatar breakdown, the creative brief, the voice and tone guide. Do this before you post anything. If you skip this, your content will never really feel like you, and your audience will sense that immediately. Also, another thing is that it won't be as repeatable, because you'll go sit down to create content right after this video, and then you'll do it again. You'll kind of start from square one. But if you have this foundation, you actually have a place where you're starting so that it's kind of cohesive, right? Second, understand where you are in the audience size strategy. If you're under 3,000 to 5,000 followers, you're in reach mode. 50% or more of your content is top of funnel. You are not going niche yet. Are you above that threshold? Start shifting the mix towards ICP specific content and conversion. A little more middle of funnel, a little bit more bottom of funnel, maybe some more expertise in social proof, right? Third, balance your Pesto pillars. 1/5 of each at the start. Again, use nuance, then adjust based on what the data shows you. Fourth, make sure your content funnel has all 3 layers. If you're only posting top of funnel and middle of funnel, you are building an audience that has nowhere to go. You're also building an audience of non-buyers, because they just think that you're hiding it from them. And then when you do add the BOFU, they're going to be like, what the hell? I thought you weren't selling anything. So add the bottom of funnel content, no matter how little, from day one, and make that ask. Fifth, run the personal brand math monthly, honestly even weekly or daily, but just as much as you can handle. Know your follower to call ratio and diagnose where the gap is. Fix that specific thing, not everything. And this is really the full system. You want to do a bottleneck analysis every few weeks, every week, every day, every month, whatever. Do a bottleneck analysis on your content. Are you generating enough followers? Are they qualified? Are they buyers? And are you booking calls, and are they converting? And then you just can continue to run that over and over and over again. And that's the full system. It's super simple, but not easy. It sounds like a lot, because it kind of is. I'm not going to sit here and be like, it's that easy. I'm not a liar. That's why I started this agency in the first place, right? Because it is hard, and a lot of people don't have time, and that's why they hire us. But if you do have time, you can take this video 4 times and get a lot of value out of it. So everything I've built at the Birdhouse is on this, and I'm giving to you here because people who succeed in this space are the ones who actually know what they are doing, not the ones who just post more. So if you want to go deeper on any of these frameworks, I post a breakdown of something like this every single week. I'm trying to go to twice a week. Don't hold me to it. So subscribe. You don't want to miss it. And if you want us to run the whole thing for you, the link to learn more about working with the Birdhouse is in the description. You will have to apply. If you're not qualified, it's going to redirect you back to YouTube. So bear with me there. So that is the full system, the 3 foundational documents, the Pesto framework, the audience size strategy, the content funnel, the personal brand math. This is a long ass video. I hope it gave you some value. I'm testing something new here. I want to make sure I'm giving a lot of value. I've read the comments. Some people were like, more practical, more stuff that we can implement. So here I am giving you a full hour plus breakdown. This is the same playbook we use for every client at the Birdhouse. The same one that took one of our clients from 0 to 140K a month just on Twitter. They don't even have the app on their phone. And the same one I used to build the Birdhouse to 1.7 last year. We're going to do over 3 this year. And the difference between people who build personal brands that actually make money and the people who are stuck posting into the void isn't really talent. It's not luck. It's not even how good their content is. It's whether they have a system behind it or not. So Now you have that system. If you want to see how this all applies specifically to LinkedIn or any other platform, there is a full playbook in the description. Again, completely free. It is the most detailed resource I have put out on the platform, and it is worth reading. I have one for X, I have one for LinkedIn. Even if LinkedIn's not your main focus, I recommend checking it out. If you want the X playbook that I shouted out in the middle of this video, that's also going to be in the description. So a lot of the principles apply across both of them, but they are both super interesting and super detailed. So I think it's like 70+ pages between the both of them. So subscribe if you found this useful. I put out a new breakdown again every week, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.